The quantum field hit Dr. Elena Vasquez like a wave of static electricity, making every synthetic material on her body tingle and spark before falling silent. Her wrist display went dark. Her neural implant disconnected with a soft pop in her mind. Even her smart fabric uniform stiffened into basic cloth. Around her, 49 other beings from across the galaxy experienced the same technological death. Elena stood perfectly still in the center of Kepler Station's main chamber, watching the chaos unfold. A crystalline Borthek ambassador was clicking frantically at his dead communication array. 3 Zephyrian traders flapped their membrane wings in distress as their gravity regulators failed. The massive Gornak representative let out a frustrated roar that shook the metal walls. Everyone was panicking except Elena Dot. She had volunteered for this. The Galactic Prohibition challenge happened once every standard cycle, designed to test the true capabilities of different species when stripped of all technological advantages. Most civilizations sent their strongest warriors or most cunning diplomats. Earth had sent a mechanical engineer who spent her weekends building furniture from scrap metal. The chamber's central platform began to glow, and arbitrator Kelness materialized in a shimmer of blue light. The ancient AIS voice resonated through. Built-in speakers in the walls, the only technology still functioning. Participants of the 847th Galactic Prohibition Challenge, Kelness announced, "You have been selected to represent your species in the ultimate test of adaptability. In 10 minutes, you will be transported to Research Moon Sigma 7, where all advanced technology is permanently disabled by quantum interference fields." Elena flexed her fingers, feeling the absence of her engineering glove's haptic feedback. She had prepared for this moment for 3 years, ever since Earth's application to join the Galactic Council had been accepted. The other council members wanted proof that humans could contribute more than just enthusiasm and reproductive efficiency. "The challenge parameters are simple," Kelness continued. "Survive for 96 standard hours using only materials available. On the moon's surface, you may cooperate or compete as you choose. Those who demonstrate exceptional adaptive capability will be considered for advanced positions within galactic infrastructure projects." Alina smiled. Infrastructure projects. That was exactly why she was here. The Zephyrian nearest to her made it sound like steam escaping from a kettle. "This is madness," he chittered in broken galactic common. "How can civilized beings be expected to function without basic life support systems? The same way we functioned for millions of years before we invented them," Elena replied quietly. The Zephyrian's 3 eyes focused on her with surprise. Most species rarely addressed each other. Before competitions began, "You speak as if you have experience with such primitive conditions," rumbled a voice behind her. Elena turned to see a Corvathian female, her metallic skin gleaming under the chamber's lights. The Corvathians were known for their industrial prowess and rigid hierarchy. "I am Engineer Prime Thexis of the Corvath Industrial Collective. Dr. Elena Vasquez, Urban Planning and Mechanical Engineering, Earth Consolidated." Elena extended her hand in a human greeting gesture. Thexis stared at it for a moment before grasping it with her larger, cooler hand. "Interesting grip protocol," Thexis observed. "It suggests equality rather than dominance." "That's the idea." Before Thexis could respond, the transport beam activated. The world dissolved into white light, Elena's first sensation. Upon materialization was the weight of real gravity pulling at her bones. No artificial gravity fields, no environmental controls adjusting the pressure in her inner ear. Just the honest pull of a celestial body with actual mass. She drew a deep breath and tasted thin air with a metallic tang. Research Moon Sigma 7 stretched before them like a sculptor's practice yard. Red-brown soil, scattered rocks of various sizes, hardy vegetation, clinging to life in small patches, and a single water source visible in the distance as a glimmer of reflected light. The sky was a pale yellow-green, lit by a distant binary star system that provided adequate warmth but harsh, unfiltered radiation. Most of the other participants were looking around in obvious distress. The Aquarian delegate was already showing signs of dehydration stress. Several of the energy-based life forms were flickering weakly without their containment units. A few of the warrior species were immediately beginning to survey the terrain for defensive positions or potential threats. Elena knelt down and scooped up a handful of soil. She rubbed it between her fingers, testing its composition. Clay content, good for ceramics. Iron oxide, which meant workable metal deposits nearby. Organic matter from decomposed plant life, indicating decent fertility potential. What are you doing? Thexis asked, approaching her. Getting to know our new home, Alina replied, standing and brushing her hands clean. Want to help me find water? The Corvathian's metallic features shifted in what might have been confusion. Do you not wish to establish territorial claims first? Locate defensive positions? Elena gestured toward the scattered groups of aliens, many of whom were indeed beginning to spread out and mark territory. They're thinking about this like a competition. But look at the parameters again. We need to survive for 4 days and demonstrate adaptive capability. The Galactic Council isn't looking for the strongest fighter or the best hoarder. What are they looking for? Problem solvers, engineers, people who can build something from nothing. Elena started walking toward the water source. Come on, let's go solve some problems. The trek to the water took 20 minutes across increasingly marshy ground. Elena was pleased to discover that the water source was actually a network of natural springs feeding into a series of connected pools. The water was clear and cool, with no obvious contamination, though she would need to test it properly before. Drinking. The water appears potable, Thexis observed, kneeling beside one of the pools. Appears being the key word. We need to purify it. Elena examined the surrounding area, noting deposits of sand and gravel near the pools, clay-rich soil higher up the slope, and several varieties of plants she didn't recognize but that showed signs of high mineral content. Do you know anything about water filtration? Corvathian industrial processes require extensive fluid purification systems, Thexis replied. However, they rely on electromagnetic separation and molecular scanners. Right, so we build filters the old-fashioned way. Elena began gathering materials, coarse gravel, fine sand, and chunks of what looked like limestone. Layer these in order from coarse to fine, run water through slowly, and basic filtration happens through physical and chemical processes. As they worked, other participants began arriving at the water source. The Aquarian delegate, a graceful being who looked like living water held together by surface tension, practically threw herself into the largest pool. The crystalline Vorthek began testing the water's mineral content by touch, his facial crystals changing color as he processed the chemical information. Interesting approach, commented a new voice. Elena looked up to see a tall, slender being with bark-like skin and leaves growing from her shoulders. I am botanist Viridian of the Sylvani Collective. You are creating primitive filtration systems. Doctor. Elena Vasquez. And yes, though I prefer to think of them as appropriate technology filtration systems. Sometimes simple is better than complex. Viridian's leaf-covered head tilted thoughtfully. An intriguing philosophy. May I contribute? Sylvani possess extensive knowledge of plant-based purification methods. Please do. As the three of them worked together, Elena noticed something interesting happening. Other participants were watching them, and several were beginning to approach with offerings of help or materials they had found. The Gornak had discovered a deposit of clay perfect for making containers. The Zephyrian had located several varieties of fibrous plants that could be woven. Even some of the more aggressive species were setting aside territorial concerns to observe their collaborative approach by the end of the first day. What had started as Elena's simple water filtration project had evolved into something much larger. They had established not just one filtration system, but three, each using different methods. Elena's gravel and sand approach, Viridian's plant-based biofilters, and a clay and charcoal system developed by Thexis using principles adapted from Corvathian metallurgy. More importantly, They had established the first interspecies cooperative work group in Prohibition Challenge history. As the binary sun set, Elena sat beside their largest filtration pool, reviewing the day's accomplishments. Clean water was just the beginning. She had spent the afternoon identifying clay deposits suitable for ceramics, metal-rich rocks that could be smelted using basic furnace techniques, and plant fibers strong enough for construction. "You are planning something beyond survival," Texas observed, settling beside her on a flat rock. "The challenge isn't just about staying alive for 4 days," Aleda replied. "It's about demonstrating adaptive capability. Anyone can hide and wait out the clock. But what if we could show them something more? Such as..." Elena gestured toward this small community that had formed around their water source. Beings from a dozen different species were sharing filtered water, exchanging knowledge about local materials, and beginning to construct basic shelters. Using collaborative techniques, what if we could show them that humans don't just adapt to new environments? What if we could show them that we can help entire communities adapt together? As if summoned by her words, a low rumble of thunder rolled across the moon's surface. In the distance, Elena could see the approach of massive storm clouds, dark and promising violent weather. "That may be tested sooner than expected," Texas noted. Elena stood up, her mind already racing through engineering solutions. 48 hours remained in the challenge, and the real test was just beginning. But she was smiling. Asterisk the building. The storm hit at dawn of the second day with the fury of an angry god. Elena woke to the sound of wind that could lift boulders and rain that struck like bullets. Through the entrance of the basic lean-to shelter she had constructed, she could see other participants' primitive shelters being torn apart by the gale. She had expected this during her 3 years of preparation. Elena had studied every available record of research moon, Sigma 7. The moon's weather patterns included massive pressure fronts that generated storms, capable of reshaping the landscape. Most previous Prohibition Challenge participants had simply endured these storms by finding caves or hiding under rock overhangs. Elena had spent the night building something better. "Status report," she called out of the wind. Around her, 19 other beings huddled in the most sophisticated storm shelter ever constructed without advanced technology. Elena had designed it based on ancient human engineering principles, a geodesic dome framework built from woven plant fibers, sealed with clay-based mortar, and anchored deep into the ground with stone foundations. "All filtration systems are functioning," reported Viridian, whose plant-based sensors could monitor their water supply even in a storm. "The underground channels you designed are directing storm runoff away from our clean water reserves. Structural integrity remains at optimal levels," added Texas, who had been skeptical of Elena's dome design until she saw how it distributed wind, stress across the entire framework instead of concentrating it at weak points. Elena smiled grimly as she listened to the storm rage outside. Through the small observation windows she had incorporated into the dome's design, she could see other participants struggling to survive in improvised shelters. Several were visible through breaks in the rain, pressed against cliff faces or crammed into shallow caves, just trying to wait out the weather. Arbitrator Kellness to all participants. Came the IS voice through speakers that somehow continue to function despite the technology prohibition. "Current storm conditions exceed normal challenge parameters. Any participant who wishes to withdraw from the challenge may activate emergency beacons for immediate transport to safety." Elena heard the familiar whine of transport beams activating across the moon's surface. She counted at least 6, maybe 7. When the light show ended, their group of 19 had suddenly become a much larger percentage of the remaining participants. "They're withdrawing," observed Kithara, a reptilian, Soren, whose species was known for military discipline. "This reduces our competition significantly." "It also reduces our community," Elena replied, checking their supply inventories. "We're not trying to outlast everyone else. We're trying to build something that works." As the second day progressed, and the storm continued, Elena's dome proved its worth, beyond simple survival. The space was large enough for all 19 beings to work on projects during the storm. Elena had divided the interior into specialized work areas, a ceramic section where they were firing clay pots and tools, a textile area where several species were experimenting with plant fiber weaving, and even a basic laboratory space where Viridian was developing plant-based medicines, and the crystalline Vorthok was cataloging mineral resources. "This is unprecedented," murmured Diplomat Nexus, a graceful cetacean who communicated through complex harmonic patterns. In all recorded Prohibition challenges, participants have focused on individual survival. You have created ... a society. "Not just a society," Elena replied. "Watching enthusiasts teach 3 other species how to work metal using friction heating and stone anvils. A civilization." By the end of the second day, the storm had passed, leaving behind a transformed landscape. What had been scattered rocks and sparse vegetation was now rich soil and newly formed water channels. Elena stepped outside the dome to survey their expanded territory. Other participants were emerging from their hiding places, looking haggard and depleted. Several approached Elena's group with obvious curiosity and not a little desperation. "You weathered the storm well," observed Commander Zarhos, a heavily armored draconian whose individual shelter had been completely destroyed. "Perhaps we might ... collaborate." Elena studied the newcomers. Several appeared to be injured or exhausted. All looked hungry and desperate. Every instinct for competition would suggest that now was the time to press their advantage, to consolidate resources and territory. Instead, Elena smiled and gestured toward their dome. "Had you eaten today? We've got hot food and clean water." By the third day, their community had grown to 32 participants. Elena had redesigned their settlement to accommodate the growth, expanding the dome into a series of connected structures that served different functions. The main dome remained their community center and storm shelter. Smaller domes house specialized workshops, metalworking, ceramics, textiles, and food preparation. But Elena's real breakthrough came when she realized that their success wasn't just about individual innovations. It was about creating systems that allowed different species to contribute their unique capabilities. The Aquarian delegate, whose water form had initially seemed like a liability, turned out to be invaluable for testing water purity and identifying underground sources. The energy-based life forms, once they learned to regulate their power output manually, became living tools for precision heating and forming. The crystalline beings could analyze material composition with accuracy that surpassed most technological scanners. "You have created something remarkable," observed a new voice. Elena turned to see Arbitrator Kelness materializing in the center of the main dome. The ancient AII's presence caused a stir among the participants, none of whom had seen a challenge. Administrator visit during an active event. "Thank you, Arbitrator," Elena replied cautiously. "Is there a problem with our approach?" "On the contrary, I am here to inform you that your group has achieved something unprecedented in 847-year history of the Prohibition Challenge." Kelness gestured toward the bustling activity around them. "You have not merely survived without technology. You have created a functioning multi-species community with infrastructure, governance systems, and collaborative innovation protocols." Elena looked around at what they had built in just 3 days. Basic but functional workshops where beings from different worlds were teaching each other techniques that no single species had developed alone. A water management system that not only provided clean drinking water, but also supported food cultivation and hygiene facilities. A governance structure based on consensus and expertise rather than hierarchy or force. "More significantly," Kelness continued, "you have demonstrated something the Galactic Council has long hoped to see. Proof that advanced civilization can be rebuilt from fundamental principles when necessary. This capability will be essential as we expand into unexplored regions of the galaxy." Elena felt a chill of realization. This wasn't really about survival, was it? "The Prohibition Challenge serves multiple purposes," Kelness acknowledged. Yes, it tests adaptive capability, but it also identifies individuals who can do more than simply adapt to new conditions. It identifies those who can help entire communities not just survive, but thrive. As the fourth and final day dawned, Elena stood atop the highest point of their settlement, looking out over what they had accomplished. Small gardens were growing in cultivated soil. Workshops were producing tools and trade goods. Beings from 16 different species were working together on projects that combined knowledge from across the galaxy. Below her, she could see the other participants who had chosen to compete individually rather than join their community. They had survived, certainly, but they looked exhausted, depleted, and lonely. They had proven they could endure hardship, but not much else. When the transport beams came to collect them at the end of the fourth day, Elena felt a surprising sadness at leaving their small civilization behind. Dr. Vasquez, Kelney said as they materialized back on Kepler Station, "The Galactic Council has reviewed the challenge results. Your performance has been ... extraordinary." Elena looked around at her fellow participants, many of whom were embracing or exchanging contact information. Bonds had been formed that would last long after the challenge ended. "Thank you, arbitrator." It was a group effort, indeed, which is why the council has decided to offer you a position that has never before been held by a human: Galactic Infrastructure Coordinator for Frontier Development. Your role would be to establish and support communities in newly discovered systems, helping diverse species adapt to challenging environments through collaborative innovation. Elena thought about the dome they had built, the systems they had created, the friendships they had forged. She thought about the look of wonder in the Zephyrian's eyes when he learned to work metal, and the sound of the cetaceans' laughter when their first clay pot came out of the kiln perfectly formed. "I accept," she said, "but I have one condition." Kelness tilted its glowing head inquiringly. "I want to bring my team with me." As Elena looked around at the 31 beings who had chosen collaboration over competition, community over conquest, she saw the future of galactic civilization, not as a hierarchy of dominant species, but as a network of diverse communities working together to build something greater than any could achieve alone. The Galactic Council had been looking for someone who could adapt to any environment and solve any problem. What they found was someone who could teach entire civilizations to do the same, and that Elena realized was exactly what humanity had always been best at, not just surviving, but showing others how to thrive.